what will happen is better for me to die. Because if I die, if you take care of my children, more than me.
I don't have interest in marriage to kill him and her husband. So
they went to church to pray for a new year. They never made it to the morning. It was the final night of 2022. Across Nigeria, millions of people were gathered in churches, on streets, in living rooms, counting down to a fresh start. The air in Abeokuta, Ogun State was full of celebration. Car horns were going off, church bells were ringing, people were singing, praying, hugging each other. It felt like the kind of night where nothing bad could happen. Mr. Kehinde Fatinoye and his wife Bukola Fatinoye were not the type of people you would expect to have enemies. Kehinde was a former staff of the Central Bank of Nigeria. Bukola was an employee of the Federal University of Agriculture, Abeokuta, commonly known as FUNAB. Together, they had built a quiet, respected life in Ibara Giare, one of the better neighborhoods in Abeokuta, located on Oba Karumi Road, just behind the residence of former Ogun State Governor Ibikunle Amoson. They were not flashy people. They were educated. They were stable. They were the kind of family their community looked up to. That night, the Fatinoyes did what many devoted Christian families across Nigeria did on December 31st. They attended a crossover service, a church gathering held specifically to pray and worship as the old year ended and the new one began. Their church was Christ Anglican Church, Iporo Ake, Abeokuta. They went with their only surviving son, Oreoluwa Fatinoye, and their adopted son, Felix Oluroyimi, who lived with them as a domestic servant. Together, the four of them worshipped, sang, and prayed. They thanked God for the year gone by. They asked for protection and progress in the year ahead. Shortly after midnight, as January 1st, 2023 was just beginning, the Fatinoye family returned home from church. The streets were still busy, neighbors were celebrating. Everything outside looked joyful and normal. They drove into their compound on Oba Karumi Road. They had a German shepherd, a trained security dog living in that compound. The kind of dog that would bark at strangers, that would alert the household if something was wrong. That night, the dog was completely calm. It did not bark, it did not growl, it did not move toward the shadows, because it recognized the man standing in those shadows. That man was Lekan Adekanbi, a 32-year-old man who had worked as the Fatinoye family's driver since 2018. For over 4 years, Lekan had driven Kehinde to work, carried Bukola to the market, been trusted with the family's daily movements. He knew their routines. He knew when they left, when they came back, which rooms they slept in. He had eaten food in that compound. He had received his salary in that compound. He had been welcomed into that family's space as a trusted member of their household. But on this night, Lekan Adekanbi was not there as an employee. He was there as something else entirely. Hidden in different corners of the compound, two other men waited alongside him. Their names were Ahmed Odetola, known on the streets as Akamo, and Wahid Adeniemi, known as Kofi. All three of them were members of the Aye Confederacy, a notorious cult group operating in southwestern Nigeria. Lekan had recruited them specifically for this night. He had told them the plan. He had let them into the compound. He had timed the whole operation around one specific detail: the crossover church service that he knew the Fatinoye family always attended. He knew when they would leave, he knew when they would return, he knew the dog would not touch him. And so, when Kehinde, Bukola, Oreoluwa, and Felix walked through the gates of their own home, happy from church and ready to begin a new year, 3 men were already inside that compound waiting for them. The family had no idea. They stepped into their house tired, peaceful, full of prayers. The moment the door closed behind them, the ambush began.
The attack came fast. The 3 men pounced on Kehinde and Bukola the moment the family entered the house. Before anyone could shout or run, the couple was overpowered. This was not a random robbery. This was a carefully planned operation carried out by men who knew exactly where they were, who they were dealing with, and what they wanted. What they wanted first was money. With Kehinde subdued and Bukola restrained, Lekan and his accomplices demanded a cash transfer. They put a phone in front of Kehinde's face and forced him to send money. The first attempt was directed to Ahmed Odetola's Kuda bank account, but the transfer failed. It did not go through. Frustrated, Lekan gave Kehinde his own account details, his personal Access bank account, and forced the transfer there. A few seconds later, Lekan's phone received an alert. 1,102,000 naira had just landed in his account. And that was when everything changed. The moment Lekan saw that alert, something clicked in his mind, and not in a good way. He realized something terrifying. His own name and account number were now directly tied to this crime. If the police came, if anyone investigated, the first thing they would find was that bank transfer going straight to him. His name, his account, sitting there as digital evidence of what had happened in this house. There was no way to undo it. The money was already received, the trail already existed. In that moment, Lekan Adekanbi made a decision that crossed a line no human being should ever cross. He decided that the only way to protect himself was to make sure there was nobody left alive to testify. He told Waheed and Ahmed what he had concluded. The couple had to be silenced, permanently. Waheed Adeniyi, known as Coffee, walked to the kitchen and picked up a knife. He came back to where Kehinde Fatinoye was being held. Kehinde Fatinoye, who had gone to church just hours before to pray for a better year. The former CBN staff who had worked his whole life to build something decent for his family. He used that knife to end Kehinde's life. Lekan Adekanbi had come prepared for the worst. He had brought a sledgehammer to the operation. He turned to Bukola Fatinoye, raised the hammer, and struck her on the head. Bukola Fatinoye died instantly on the floor of her own home on the first day of the new year. Before you continue watching this story, pause for a second and think about this. Two people who went to church to welcome a new year never saw the sunrise. If this story moves you, if you believe that justice matters and that true stories like this should never be forgotten, please subscribe to Trem Crime Zone right now. Hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell notification. Every week, we bring you real stories from Nigeria and across Africa. Stories of betrayal, justice, and survival. Stories that need to be told. We will never stop telling them. Subscribe now so you never miss one. Now back to the story. As the couple's lives were being taken, something happened that the attackers did not plan for. Oreoluwa Fatinoye, the couple's only surviving son, and Felix Oloriyomi, the adopted domestic staff, walked into the room. They had been elsewhere in the house. Maybe they had gone to change clothes after church. Maybe they heard something and came to check. Whatever the reason, they stepped into a scene that no son should ever have to see. The three attackers turned on them immediately. Oreoluwa and Felix were grabbed, overpowered, and tied up with ropes, their hands bound tightly behind their backs. They could not fight back. They were completely helpless. Lekan and his crew then did something that showed just how far they were willing to go to erase all witnesses. They put Oreoluwa and Felix in the boot, the trunk of the Fatinoye family car. They drove through the dark streets of Abeokuta, past people still celebrating the new year, toward the Ogun River Bridge at Adigbe along Adigbe-Obada Road. When they got there, they opened the boot, dragged both young men out, walked them to the edge of the bridge, and threw them into the dark, moving water of the Ogun River in the middle of the night. Then they drove away. They went back to the house, set it on fire to destroy evidence, and arranged for the family car to be sold. Lekan had already made a deal with a man named Usman to sell the Hyundai vehicle, originally worth about 12 million naira, for just 150,000 naira. They also took 6 mobile phones from the house, valued at 1.5 million naira. A man later named Aziz Usman received the car and dismantled it at a workshop, selling it off piece by piece as spare parts. By the time neighbors noticed the smoke and fire rising from the Fatinoye compound that night, Lekan, Ahmed, and Waheed were long gone. And as far as they were concerned, there were no witnesses left. They were wrong.
When Felix Oloriyomi hit the water of the Ogun River that night, everything went dark and cold. He was tied up. The current was pulling at him. He had every reason to die there. But somehow, in the chaos of hitting the water, the rope around his hands loosened. Not fully, but just enough. Felix fought. He kicked. He moved his hands against the rope until it gave way. And then he swam. He swam through the cold river in the early hours of January 1st, 2023, and he made it to the bank. Oreoluwa was not so lucky. His ropes held. He could not free himself. Oreoluwa Fatinoye, the only surviving son of Kehinde and Bukola, drowned in the Ogun River that night while the rest of Abeokuta was celebrating a new year. Meanwhile, that same morning, neighbors who saw smoke coming from the Fatinoye compound broke in to help. What they found inside was not a fire accident. They found the remains of Kehinde and Bukola Fatinoye inside that house, burned and lifeless. The family's car was gone. The couple's son was missing. Their domestic staff was missing, and the German Shepherd security dog, the dog that should have barked at intruders, had not made a single sound all night. Kehinde's brother, Samuel Fatinoye, was called by a family friend and told to come to Abeokuta urgently. Nobody wanted to say what happened over the phone. Samuel made the drive from Lagos, walked into his brother's home, and found a scene of unimaginable grief. What was supposed to be a New Year's visit became the worst moment of his life. The police were called. Officers arrived and began examining the scene. It was clear to them almost immediately that this was not a random attack by unknown people. Somebody who knew this house was involved. Somebody the dog trusted. Somebody who knew the family's schedule well enough to wait for the perfect moment. Circumstantial evidence pointed strongly toward one person, Lekan Adekanbi, the family's driver. He was brought in for questioning. And then, while Lekan was still sitting in that police cell, Felix Olorenyomi walked back through the gates alive. Felix told investigators everything. He described the three men in the house. He described being tied up. He described being thrown into the Ogun River with Oreoluwa. He described how the rope around his wrist came loose in the water and how he managed to swim out. He also confirmed what everyone feared, that Oreoluwa had gone into the water with him and had not come back up. Right at that moment, police sources reported, word reached Lekan inside the cell that one of the river victims had survived. According to accounts from that night, Lekan became visibly agitated when he heard this. When Felix was brought nearby, Lekan reportedly saw him in person. Something broke inside him. He knew his plan had failed. The following day, January 2nd, 2023, Lekan Adekanbi complained of feeling sick inside his cell. Officers rushed him to a hospital nearby for treatment. He was not handcuffed, and the moment he saw an opening, he jumped from his hospital bed, scaled the fence of that hospital, and disappeared. His escape caused an immediate scandal. The divisional police officer of the Ibarra police station was removed from his post for negligence. The two officers who had taken Lekan to the hospital were sanctioned. The commissioner of police ordered both the homicide unit and the anti-kidnapping unit to work together to find him. Here's something we want you to do right now. Pause this video for just 10 seconds. In the comment section below, write down the name of the river where Oreoluwa and Felix were thrown. Just write it. It keeps this story alive. It makes YouTube know that people care about this content, and it helps us reach more viewers who need to hear true stories like this. Go ahead, write it now, then keep watching. Police traced Lekan first to his elder brother's house in Iseyin, Oyo State, but he had already moved on by the time officers arrived. The search continued for 3 full weeks, spanning multiple states, using technical and intelligence methods. On January 21st, 2023, 21 days after the crime, Lekan Adekanbi was found hiding in a house right there in Abeokuta. The man who had run across states came back and was caught in the very city where it all happened. Ahmed Odetola and Waheed Adeneyi were arrested separately in Ogere on February 9, 2023. They led investigators to others involved in the cover-up, including those who bought the stolen car and helped dismantle it. In total, 7 suspects were arrested. Among them were Lekan's wife, Temitope Fadairo, and his mother, Adenike Adekanbi, who were accused of helping him hide and evade arrest. And on the 3rd morning after the crime, fishermen working along the Ogun River found something in the water, the remains of a young man, his hands still bound behind his back. It was Oreoluwa. The police brought Felix to the river to identify him. He confirmed it was Oreoluwa. The Fatinoye family's only surviving son was gone. Kehinde and Bukola were buried on January 2nd, 2022, just 1 day after they were taken from this world. Their son Oreoluwa was buried separately. A family that prayed together on New Year's Eve was laid to rest before the first week of January was over. When Lekan Adekanbi sat across from investigators and was asked why did he do this? Why did he plan the end of a family that had employed him for 5 years? His answer was one of the most chilling things to come out of this entire case. He said he was angry because they refused to increase his salary. He said he had asked them for a loan to buy a motorcycle, and they said no. That was it. That was the reason. A salary increase and a motorcycle loan. Two requests that were declined, and Lekan's response was to recruit 2 cult members, arm them, hide in the compound of the family that trusted him, wait for them to come home from church and take everything from them: their money, their car, their lives, their son. To understand how disturbing this is, consider the timeline. Lekan Adekanbi had worked for the Fatinoye family since 2018. For over 4 years, they had employed him, given him income, trusted him with their car, fed their security dog in that compound so regularly that the animal saw him as part of the family. And instead of looking for another job if he was unhappy, instead of requesting through proper channels or simply moving on, he sat down and planned their destruction. He chose a specific night, New Year's Eve, knowing that the family would be coming home from church late at night, tired, unsuspecting, hearts full of prayer and hope. He brought accomplices who were members of a confraternity. He brought a sledgehammer to that house on purpose. This was not a crime of passion. This was a carefully planned, deliberately executed operation. The judge who later presided over this case said the same thing, and she said it clearly. In February 2024, all the accused were arraigned before a Abeokuta High Court on 24 counts. The charges included conspiracy, armed robbery, murder, arson, escaping from lawful custody, and perverting the course of justice. Lekan Adekanbi, Ahmed Odetola, and Wahid Adeniyi all pleaded not guilty, but the evidence presented by prosecuting counsel Mrs. Adefisoye Temilola was detailed, corroborated, and overwhelming. There was the bank transfer that had gone to Lekan's own account. There was Felix Olorunyomi's eyewitness account. There were the confessions all 3 men had made to police. There were the accomplices who dismantled the car. There was a chain of evidence that left very little room for doubt. On February 3, 2025, just over 2 years after the crime, Justice Basirat Adebowale delivered her verdict at the Ogun State High Court in Kobape, Abeokuta. The judgment took more than 3 hours to read. She found all 3 principal defendants, Lekan Adekanbi, Ahmed Odetola, and Wahid Adeniyi, guilty of murder. She found the prosecution had proven its case beyond all reasonable doubt. Then she looked at the 3 men standing before her and said words that the family of Kehinde and Bukola Fatinoye had been waiting 2 years to hear. For killing father, mother, and son, you do not deserve mercy. All 3 were sentenced to death by hanging. Aziz Usman, who dismantled the stolen vehicle, received a 14-year prison sentence. Anu Oluwapo Owolaja received a 2-year term. 2 other suspects, Abbas Odetola and Lukman Adewusi, were discharged. Lekan's wife and mother, who had been accused of helping him evade arrest, faced their own charges separately.
One Lekan Adekanbi, a driver to the deceased family, was arrested based on circumstantial evidence while investigation continued. The 3 suspects, who are members of Aye confraternity, have all confessed to their various roles in the gruesome and callous murder of the family. The 3 of them will soon face the court for trial.
I don't have interest in marriage to kill him and her husband. So the reason why is that I just want to collect money from him. Yes, I regret it because they did not listen to what I told them, that we want to collect ordinary money. We don't want to kill them. We don't want to kill anybody.
Let us take a moment and really sit with what happened to the Fatinoye family. Kehinde and Bukola Fatinoye were not rich politicians. They were not controversial figures. They were 2 working-class Nigerians who educated themselves, found good jobs, married, raised a son, and built a modest but dignified life in Abeokuta. They had already experienced loss before this tragedy. Their second son had passed away just months earlier in June 2022, reportedly after collapsing during a football match at school. They had buried a child and kept going. They had pushed through grief and still found the strength to go to church on New Year's Eve and pray. And then, the man they employed, the man who knew their home, their dog, their routine,
their schedule, their trust, chose to use all of that access to orchestrate their end. What do we take from a story like this? The first lesson is that proximity is not the same as loyalty. Lekan Adekanbi was close to this family. He was inside their compound every single day. But closeness does not guarantee good intentions. Many people have been hurt not by strangers, but by people who had regular access to their space. That is not a reason to live in fear, but it is a reason to remain observant. Trust must be earned and re-earned over time. Familiarity should not make us blind. The second lesson is about the danger of entitlement that turns into rage. Lekan was not satisfied with his salary. That is understandable. Many employees feel undervalued. But there is a massive difference between leaving a job you feel underpays you and deciding that the people who employ you deserve to die for it. The fact that Lekan planned this crime so carefully, bringing a sledgehammer, recruiting cult members, timing it for New Year's Eve, tells us this was not a sudden outburst. This was a plan. The anger had been building. It had been organized. That level of premeditation makes this crime particularly horrifying. The third lesson is for all of us who live in Nigerian communities. Security consciousness must never be relaxed, even in GRA areas, even in places that feel safe, even on nights that feel peaceful. The Fatinoye compound had a security dog. That dog was the family's protection. But because Lekan had access to that dog regularly, it became useless as a warning system. Home security must be layered. It cannot depend on only one measure. The fourth lesson is about justice and the fact that it sometimes takes time, but it does come. Lekan escaped from police custody. He ran to another state. He hid for weeks, but he was caught. Ahmed and Wahid were caught. Every single person involved in covering up this crime faced consequences. The court did not give lenient sentences. The judge did not accept appeals for mercy. 3 men who planned to take lives received the same sentence: death. Justice for the Fatinoye family was not fast, but it was thorough, and it was final. Abeokuta Fatinoye was the couple's only surviving son. He went into that cold river with his hands tied, and he never came back. There is something painful about the fact that this family had already lost one child in 2022, and then within the same year, lost everything else. No parent should bury a child. No family should be wiped out because of greed and entitlement. And no person who trusted and employed someone should have that trust turned into a weapon against them. We tell this story today because the Fatinoye family deserves to be remembered. Kehinde Fatinoye deserves to be remembered. Bukola Fatinoye deserves to be remembered. Abeokuta Fatinoye deserves to be remembered, not just as victims, but as real people who lived, who worked, who prayed, and who deserved to see January 2nd, 2023. Now we want to hear from you. What went through your mind as you listened to this story? What do you think about the sentence that was handed down? And what do you think could have been done differently to prevent what happened that night? Drop your thoughts in the comment section below. We read every single comment on this channel, and we genuinely want to hear your perspective. If you are watching this and you have not yet subscribed to Trem Crime Zone, this is the moment. This channel exists for one reason: to make sure that true stories from Nigeria and Africa are told with care, with accuracy, and with the respect they deserve. We cover cases that matter, cases that happen to real families in real communities, stories that teach us something. If you believe these stories should be told, subscribe right now, hit the bell icon, and share this video with someone who needs to see it. We will see you in the next one. Stay safe and never stop paying attention.